must be our goal and our guide. And all that we strive for as a human family, dignity and hope, progress and prosperity, depends on peace. But peace depends on us.
Viewers, those listening to this tape or this video, I want to bring to your attention that the politics of proxy wars in Africa is becoming real, and it has become a reality. I want to bring to the attention of the African states that time and time again we have fallen victims of proxy wars. We fight wars that are not ours. We fall in conflicts that are not supposed to be, don't help Africa, and they don't help our countries at all. The proxy war that is in East and Central and the Horn of Africa has been ignited, supported, equipped by France. It has been very real that the French government, quietly through its company called Total Oil, has been searching for resources around the triangle of East and Central Africa and the Great Lakes region and the Horn of Africa. The LAPSET was one of them, which could have been a landmark project for the people of France. They withdrew from it. The Tanga to Mwanza, they made it, they withdrew from it. The search for oil and resources through Total Oil has brought us the dangers of a proxy war in the region. It is therefore very prudent for people of the region to understand the dynamics that we are going through. For example, in Rwanda and the Burundi conflict, there is a proxy war. We are fighting a proxy country has brought us to a war between the two countries, between Uganda and Rwanda and Burundi. There is a proxy war in Congo who is sponsoring a resurgence of rebels that are fighting President Tshisekedi because he was not supported by countries that we know very well. This type of strategy has happened in North Africa, where Libya has been reduced to rebels, where each faction, even the government supported by United Nations, is being bombarded by a rebel called Khalifa Haftar, who is funded by countries that we know. The question of Somalia and the Kenyan maritime presents a challenge, a test case for Africa and East Africa to stand firm and denounce the actions of countries that bring proxy wars and proxy politics in our region. It is therefore my humble submission that for this conflict, for this to end, we must do enough publicity, advocacy around the area to tell and explain to the international community why this problem is going to create an imbalance in the peace in the region, and the regional peace will be affected. It is therefore my humble submission that as a Ugandan whose troops, brothers and sisters, mothers and fathers of other many millions Ugandans who are in Somalia, condemn any action by the Somali government to try to resolve issues that should have been resolved amicably as Africans within the African confines. I submit therefore that some of us will go a mile further to do now, from now onwards, to expose, to show the challenges of these countries that make us fight a proxy war in Africa. Thank you very much for listening. God bless you.
I wanted to give my huge congratulations to Kenya on securing a seat on the UN Security Council for the 2021-2022 session. As one of the UN Security Council's permanent members, the UK is excited to be working so closely with Kenya, a country whose values and objectives we share. Coming just 6 months after Prime Minister Johnson and President Kenyatta agreed the UK-Kenya strategic partnership, it's fantastic that our two countries can work together as a force for good on the world's biggest international stage. Hongera, congratulations.
There are a number of countries in Africa that produce oil. Kenya today became one of the member states of oil-producing countries in Africa. It exported its first oil, where President Uhuru Kenyatta flagged off the oil that was got from Turkana in one of the northeastern parts of this country. But is oil a curse to Africa? Is oil a curse to the entire places where oil is found? We see in the Middle East, the wars in Iran, in Saudi Arabia, in Yemen, in United Arab Emirates. It has developed the area in Qatar. We all have many cities, skyscrapers coming up because of the proceeds from the oil. But can Africa emulate that example and bring the same oil proceeds to make sure that it makes lives better for the people, the betterment of the people of Africa and their families and their other activities? I want to see that. But I might not be able to explain why Africa always falls a victim. Are there external forces that make the oil in Africa to become sour? Is it the competition of the oil companies, Total and Shell BP and others that come to Africa to take the share of the oil? Simply because we have no energy, ability to be able to drill the oil ourselves, refine it ourselves. It is shocking, therefore, to go to Nigeria, for example, a country that produces third in the world for oil production, has no petrol at a petrol station. Is this not a curse? If it's not a curse, what do you call it? Thank you. Good morning, viewers. Welcome to Punchline Africa Television, broadcasting all the way from the Republic of Kenya in the political command center of Punchline Africa Television in Nairobi, the headquarters of Punchline Africa Television. This morning, the show is Diplomatic Leaks. With this show, we go behind the diplomatic lines and we get experts to tell us more. We might be rejoicing, but there are some loopholes that the experts can actually tell us make us to understand. And this morning, Kenya's victory is Africa's strength. Do we really need to say anything more than that? Some will say yes, some will say no. On the panel this morning, I have one of the most brutal man in terms of Pan-Africanism, brutally. He's not brutal in terms of physical minds, physical strength, but he's brutal in terms of intellectual discourse. If you want to discuss, if you want to disagree, you will disagree with him. This morning, welcome Professor Piero Lumumba to our show.
Thank you very much, Dr. David, for inviting me to this conversation.
Next on our panel, we have retired major, a security consultant, a man who knows security, who understands security in Africa and the world. He likes talking about Mossad and FBI most of the time because those are places, but he doesn't know there is a KGB where all of us and the PLO must have passed in Moscow while, learning institutions, what international institutions mean to our livelihood. Major Retired Mbijiwe, welcome to the show.
Here today, and I first of all pass my greetings to our viewers everywhere across the world, and I salute Professor PLO. He's a man of awesome discourse. When you interact with Professor, you're surely gonna walk away with some wisdom. And thank you, Professor, for having us.
Thank you, Major, for your erudite thinking in the area of security.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
If you are looking for this show, pick a dictionary to be near, because it seems it is going to be hot with this type of words coming out. I would have said thank you very much for your courtesy, but the professors put it in a different way. Next is, because we had a guest, I should have introduced the ladies first, but in this case, next is Miriam Ogutu. Miriam Ogutu is a senior researcher and an anchor, and also a vibrant Pan-African when it comes to South Sudan and other areas where conflicts persist. Tanzania, for example, where today we have got somebody to answer some questions for us on Magufuli, and don't hesitate to fire the questions. PLO is a great friend of President Magufuli. He has got an audience with President Magufuli. Welcome to the show, Miriam Ogutu.
Thank you very much, Doctor, and a very good morning to our guest this morning, and a very good morning to our viewers wherever they're watching us across the world.
Next is our investigative journalist, Daniel Wesonga. That's the man who goes behind the lines to find out what the leaks were in New York, who voted where, how was the voting, which country tells us a lie, which country talks of lies during daytime and they vote differently at night. Daniel Wesonga, welcome to the show.
Very good morning, Dr. Matsanga, our guest, Miriam, and our esteemed viewers across Kenya, the continent of Africa, and across the world. Good morning.
Good morning.
Kenya has been at the United Nations for the last 23 years as a non-member rotational basis. It was there, and it is now there. That's how I will begin. Yesterday, it was confirmed again that Kenya will be there for another 2 years. What are the challenges? What does it mean to us? What does it mean to the entire Africa, sub-Saharan Africa, the countries that are represented, that Kenya is the third time that it is going into these chambers again. Remember, during Kibaki's time, Kenya was in there. Now it is in there. We are looking at the legacy of President Uhuru Kenyatta. We are looking at the regional peace, international status, calling back tourists to come back to Kenya, investment. It comes at a bad time when COVID-19 has scared almost everybody. It is going to take an uphill task for the people of Africa to invite people to come, to persuade people to come to Africa, to invest, to do tourism. Therefore, it is very important. That's why we chose this. We want to take this opportunity to thank Kenya, the government, the handlers of this mission. But deep down in my heart, why I'm going to surrender, right now, why I want to surrender and my moderation, I want to square it down with Professor and Mbijiwe. we want to square it down. I am saddened also by the events that 2 African countries go and wash their linen. Go and wash their linen in New York. The whole world is watching. And that's why I want to surrender my moderation to Miriam Ogutu to be neutral, to allow us to brainstorm. And I will leave the floor to Miriam to invite Professor P.L.O. Lumumba. As much as we might have the same ideas on so many things, on this one, we want to tear each other intellectually on this forum to make sure that maybe he will teach me something which I don't know. I agree with him on 1 or 2 aspects. But why should 2 African countries go and wash their bad linen in New York? That is my worry. The sadness, we won yesterday. I was one of those shouting that some of my friends think that I shout for the sake of shouting. But I've been shouting about African Union. That's why I want to come from the angle of African Union. And for me, if I was given opportunity, I would select P.L.O. Lumumba to be my Secretary General of African Union or African Union Commission Chairperson. Because I will always go to his office and bring him down, say, no, this is not very good for what Lumumba and Kwame Nkrumah wanted. Surely, Kwame Nkrumah, if he woke up from the grave today and saw what is happening in New York yesterday, so Qatar giving people money to vote Kenya out, I think he will walk back to the grave a sad person like I am today. Over to you, Miriam. I surrender my moderation. Take it there and let PLO take his first place.
And perhaps my first question will be perhaps when you saw the news, the breaking news there yesterday that Kenya has clinched this seat against Djibouti by winning 129 votes against Djibouti 62 votes. Doctor, what was your first reaction? Or maybe we start with Professor P.L.O. What was your reaction there to learn that Kenya has won that?
I'm one who is not elated for a number of reasons. First of all, I think Djibouti was out of order. The African Union sat and said that Kenya would take over from South Africa. Why Djibouti was then persuaded by some countries in the Arab world and in Europe, I do not know. The net effect is that we had a competition that was completely unnecessary. Kenya, having been endorsed by the AU, ought to have been the only candidate. Number two, it is important to guide some of the people who think. Somebody sent me a message and said, we are celebrating because Kenya is the first country in history from Africa ever to have joined the non-permanent membership. And I reminded the individual, number one, Ghana was first in 1962. And of course, in 1964, there was Cote d'Ivoire. And Kenya itself has been a non-permanent member of the UN Security Council. It was a non-permanent member in 1973. And it was also a non-permanent member in 1997. So a celebration ought to be in moderation. In moderation first because, and the security experts will tell you, the mere presence of Kenya there does not bring much on the table. Why? Because the votes of all the members can be neutralized by a single veto vote of the permanent members. And that is why, to me, the only agenda that Kenya should have during the 2 years that he's serving is a reform of the Security Council. President Mugabe was very vocal about this before he died, that it makes nonsense to have a non-permanent member position. You are mere flower girls. There is nothing. You are merely playing the gooseberry, as they would say in English. And there is no contribution. So when I see Kenya saying that they have 10 things that they want to do. Where will they do them? They can only do them if China accepts, if the United Kingdom accepts, if France accepts, and if the United States accept, and if Russia accepts. If they don't accept, then you can do zero. So let us celebrate in moderation, appreciating that there is nothing dramatic that we are going to do. There is nothing unusual that we are going to do. The only single agenda should be reform of the Security Council so that Africa has a permanent seat. That is my contribution.
Retired Major Mbijiwe, just tying on what Professor there has said, when you heard Kenya had won this seat against Djibouti, what was your reaction?
First of all, just to join what Dr. Matsanga said earlier, and Professor, it was such a sad thing to see two brothers, especially even from the Horn of Africa, wrestling for the same trophy. It's noteworthy that the other countries, especially those that represented Asia, Europe, actually gave way to each other. There was nothing to compete about. Djibouti has been on our case on this matter since African Union endorsed Kenya. Djibouti refused to back off. I think Djibouti counted on the Francophone vote and the Arab vote, which to some extent was justifiable, remembering what Amina Mohammed went through when she tried to run for the chairmanship of African Union. There was a gang of the Francophone nations against her, and that worked against her. However, Djibouti really, I think as President Uhuru Kenyatta dared some people previously, I think we shall revisit. We shall revisit with Djibouti. We shall look into their dare of their bigger brother. Man, we are a regional hegemony. If we talk about geopolitics, Kenya is a regional hegemony. We ought to be respected as such. I've tried to prod Dr. Matsanga to leak it, and I maybe the journalist Wetonga has some leakage on who voted for us and who didn't vote for us. I don't know if it's true, but somebody said Rwanda didn't vote for us.
Yes.
I can you imagine the disrespect of Rwanda not voting for their elder brother Kenya when President Kagame grew up in this country? I can show you his house on Bagathi Way where he lived. I hear, I don't know about our neighbors to the south. We have Professor to tell us about it. But why am I feeling in my heart that they didn't vote for us? I don't know, but I feel they don't have a goodwill for us.
At least my country voted with the feet, with the stomach, with the head, and the brain. So Professor should not say Uganda has a problem. We have no problem. Museveni on this one scored, delivered the vote safely.
I want to know how Somalia voted. I want to know how Ethiopia voted. I want to know, is South Sudan yet there? No.
They did. They voted. South Sudan voted.
Eligible to vote is Venezuela because they've not paid their annual fee that the member states pay. So the rest who are eligible, yes, to vote.
Yeah, so to finish my comment is really being a regional hegemony, I want to know who was with us and who was against us. Look, I know as Professor said, there isn't much really of a celebration. We are more flower girls at the United Nations Security Council, but being there and being a regional hegemony is very strategic. So I want to know who believes in our strategic importance and who does not.
All right, Daniel, the same question, and then we can move forward.
Yes, I believe this was a very great moment of soul searching for Kenya as well as its neighbors. And of course, as Major Retired Mbijiwe has said, now we need to go back and be able to evaluate those allies, perceived allies that have been always seen as our friends, where their votes lied. Because these are people who have been depending on Kenya on one way or another. Look at Somalia, look at Rwanda. these are countries that Kenya has helped in so many ways. In Somalia, our soldiers are still there trying to pacify the region. Rwanda has been having we have been having a lot of bilateral relationship with them. So really, it's a moment where we should look back and really go back on the drawing board and redetermine our fate going forward.
Mm-hmm. So, of course, that vote yesterday in Kenya last year, as we all know, of course, during a vote at the AU, I think twice, Kenya was voted as the candidate of choice to go get this seat. But Djibouti, yes.
Just to comment on what the two gentlemen have said.
Go ahead.
Because I disagree with them that we shall revisit, and I disagree with them very politely. Kenya is the representative of the African group. And therefore, it is not about Kenya's national interest. It is about the interests of the African group. And Djibouti was out of order. Nobody can debate that. The AU having endorsed Kenya, they should have gone in the same way that Mexico and India and others went in through. Having appreciated that, I think it would be petty on our part as a country to begin to ask who voted for us and who did not vote for us. What is important is that we are now there. We represent the African interest during the period that we are there. And that is what is important, not who voted for us. If we begin to do that, that is the kind of pettiness that Nyerere and Nkrumah said undermines Africa's unity. We ought to be big. In fact, I would myself be very happy if President Kenyatta were to invite the president of Djibouti to come to Kenya so that there is some kind of rapprochement going forward. That is the thing to do. When you are big, you act big. And when you are small, you behave small. So the first foreign visit that I think President Kenyatta should actually undertake post-COVID is to visit Djibouti. That would be my approach. And if I were to advise President Kenyatta, that's what I would tell him.
All right. Doctor, we know, of course, that Kenya was endorsed by African Union last year through the voting that took place there, but we saw Djibouti decided otherwise. So by Kenya receiving this vote yesterday, does it go to legitimize African Union's, as a strong institution here in the continent?
I agree with Professor Lumumba that Kenya is a regional hub, an African unity envoy to the Security Council. There is no more Djibouti from yesterday. Djibouti is Kenya, Kenya is Djibouti. But we have to go back. And this is where I wanted to challenge him, to bring Professor in to tell me, do we really have friends or we assume? That's the way I teach my students. Do we have friends or we assume we have friends? Time has come for Africa, for Kenya, to ask whether they have friends or they have idiots. Time has come for Kenya to ask whether Ethiopia is their friend, Somalia, whom we are dying for, is a friend or not. Because we have countries that pretend during daytime, Professor Lumumba, that they are good friends. They eat our sausage, they eat our fresh food, they eat everything here. But during night time, they vote differently. They undermine Kenya. Time has come for Kenya to soul search, not to revenge. But the Foreign Office, does the Ministry of Foreign Affairs tell us a lie most of the time that Ethiopia is a very great friend of ours? When Ethiopia, wait. When Ethiopia is gunning down our 2 planes of Kenya and Somalia, I want to know. I saw Ababu Namwamba talking rubbish this morning. I am honest. I am a man who tells it as it is, because they will not defeat me on international scene. Tell me why Ethiopia is gunning down Kenyan planes when they reach Sector 2 in Mogadishu. If you answer me that, then you can lecture to me and waste my time. 2, I support PLO in the sense celebrations have to take place. Even when Jesus was acquitted by Pontius Pilate, PLO, there were celebrations that as he was being taken to Herod, Herod would return a verdict. Even when he got out the cloth and handed it over to Jesus, Herod said, return him down to Pilate because I am not the commander to take decisions. But I want to see there were some Kenyans who are entitled to be happy that it has taken us out of the local politics that was boring. That's one. Yes, the local politics was boring. Let's also be honest, Mr. Mbijiwe. Yes, we are fed up of this local politics. People started jubilation when they had some good news coming. Kipchoge has won in the UN. You have to celebrate. So PLO, don't go hard on them. They had to celebrate. But the problem we have now is with our Minister of Foreign Affairs. They have done a very great job on this one. But we want them to tell us who are our real friends. Who are the real friends of Kenya? Is Somalia a real friend of Kenya? If Somalia, the one we are pacifying today, PLO, and then Somalia was in the forefront, the Somali ambassador in New York is my student whom I filled forms in London. He kept on informing me of all, that's why I have all this knowledge, who was voting where and what. So if Somalia itself turned around and did not vote for Kenya, when we have troops in Kismayo, what will these people do about our troops? I'm more concerned. What will they do about Ugandan troops? Do they really love them? Or we are occupying a territory which they will turn on us and dismember us? My question, moderator, goes to one, the Minister of Foreign Affairs, to state categorically to President Uhuru Kenyatta, who is our friend. There has been a fallacy, and the PLO fears to say this. There has been a fallacy in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs that Ethiopia is our greatest friend. It is not. It is not. And time has come out to speak it out, because it is going to happen very soon. It is going to happen very soon. Another plane is going to be shot in Sector 2. How long, how many planes and lives will you lose? That's my contribution.
All right, PLO, Professor there.
Yes.
Yes. Does friendship matter when it comes to matters diplomacy there, as you even answered, Doctor?
We are falling into a very dangerous trap. And this trap, I just want to read a book that I'm reading now, Africa Must Unite by Kwame Nkrumah. And this is a speech delivered by Kwame Nkrumah on the 7th day of January 1961. And this is what he said before I make my comments. If we do not formulate plans for unity and take active steps to form political union, we'll soon be fighting and warring among ourselves with imperialists and colonialists standing behind the screen and pulling vicious wires to make us cut each other's throats for the sake of their diabolical purposes in Africa. If you look at the Djibouti candidacy or candidature, you will possibly be surprised that there were foreign powers with strategic interests in Djibouti. Remember, the Americans have a large military base in Djibouti. Remember that the French have a large military base in Djibouti. Remember that the Chinese have a base in Djibouti. Remember that the Chinese also used that port. So once again, in a very diabolical way, Africans are left fighting in the manner that you suggest we do, because the colonialists and imperialists want it to be this way. And you've asked a very critical question. Do we need to be friends? As long as we are independent countries which claim sovereignty, what is going to happen is that there's going to be strategic competition. Ethiopia is going to strategically compete with us. Djibouti is going to do so. Remember, we have LAPSET. LAPSET implemented will undermine Ethiopia's involvement with Djibouti and Eritrea. And there are a number of things which are of geopolitical significance. If Kenya wants to represent Africa, Kenya must remember that. This is not a Kenyan seat. This is an Africa group seat. And we must go there and represent Djibouti and represent all those who did not vote for Kenya. The most important thing is that we were an African candidate. All those geopolitical issues can be resolved. The United States of America, which is today a good friend of Germany, is it not that United States that a few years ago bombed Germany? Japan, is it not the same United States which dropped atomic bombs? In matters of country-to-country relations, there is change that is dynamic. So my own view is, let us ask ourselves the strategic critical question. What role are we going to play as African representatives? And my prescription is our agenda should be number one, to ensure that we use the United Nations to achieve the desire of Africa, that is the silencing of the guns by the year 2020. If we can use our presence in the assembly for purposes of ensuring that we solve the problems in the Sahel, in South Cameroon, in northern Mozambique, in Ethiopia, or rather in Somalia, we would have done a good thing. Number two, that we make a case for reform of the Security Council so that when we complete our tenure in the year 2021, we will be on a path for creation of a permanent membership of African group. That is all I wish to happen.
I agree.
From Bijiwe comes in, Professor, I agree with you. How are you going to do it when the same imperialists have captured you? How are you going to say we need to be friends when Ethiopia is gunning down our 2 planes? When Somalia, whom we have taken flesh, blood, water, everything, we have lost in Kenya. Al-Shabaab comes to bomb us. Somalia picks money from Qatar. It is transferred through here and given to Al-Shabaab to kill us. You are telling me we should keep quiet? We are already in chaos. For me, I have a radical plan. And let President Uhuru Kenyatta hear my radical plan. Let's find out who are our friends. Let's carry the United Nations, but find out who are our friends. We cannot assume of a foreign policy, a policy that is just not a reality. You know, we were told that, don't worry, Ethiopia is our friend. My God, Ethiopia, Somalia, ganged on us. They brought the candidate called Djibouti, supported by Qatar. Now I'm telling you facts. Qatar paid. PLO, you have advised me on several things on the maritime conflict of Somalia and Kenya. Who pays Somalia's fees in the maritime? Qatar. Qatar pays the money, even the tea they drink. So, are we surely, you say we want a seat in the UN? Do you know what these same countries, if we go like that and Kenya proposes, some of them will even align with Brazil and give the seat to Brazil or India. They will not give it to Africa. So that is my point.
But yes. Is it a strategic competition, or do we need friendship when it comes to matters diplomacy?
Miriam, with all due respect to my colleagues, especially Professor, one of the things that we've left behind in our national foreign policy is strategic intelligence. There has not been a fusion of strategic intelligence in our foreign policy. So much so that our foreign policy, whatever drives our interest in the region, has not been put on a firm foundation of intelligence or strategic intelligence, so that whatever we do first has a fusion of national interest that is informed by deep, can I say deep espionage? I'm avoiding the word espionage. But truly, this is what Dr. Matanga is saying. Can we find out? To find out is to spy. What do the countries in the region think about us? What do they talk about us at night? And I threw a challenge to our DMI, Directorate of Military Intelligence, and our National Intelligence Service. By the way, these are two institutions that I think should undergo a thorough purging, a thorough cleaning, because we have men and women seated in our National Intelligence Service that have zero understanding of strategic intelligence that drives foreign policy. The other night, Professor Pielo, I was doing a research, on this COVID-19 pandemic. I wanted to understand, is COVID-19 even envisioned in our national security policy, or even in our national defense policy, which they call the white paper? And in all my researches, I found one document by a gentleman at the University of Nairobi that actually analyzed all this, and there is not a single mention of the word pandemic, or even the thought of what pandemic would mean to our national security. The same applies to our foreign policy. I wonder, truly, most of our officials, the technocrats, the people that should be thinking for Kenya and strategizing for Kenya, are driven by corruption, greed, fleas, want of stealing public funds, to the extent that they do not think strategically about this country. Now we have countries in the region mocking us, Ethiopia, bringing down our planes in broad daylight just to defend Sector 2, because Sector 2 is where Ethiopia wants Al-Shabaab to grow. And so what do the region think about us? I'm so grateful that Uganda stood with us. I'm so grateful that South Sudan, this country has failed South Sudan big time, but South Sudan stood with us all the way. But the other countries mocked us. We need to sincerely look at these countries. And Professor, I know you want Pan-Africanism and brotherhood and kiss our brother and say all is well, but no, it is not well. It is not well.
Daniel, it is all well.
Yes, I think, Miriam, I tend to cascade towards what Major Richard Mbijiwe has said. As far as we look at Kenya as a big brother, of course, it's going to be part of the larger team that will pass resolutions touching on global peace and security. Also, Kenya will be a link in Africa that shall advocate for Africa's favorable policies and reforms. But also, we need to look at our individual interests, and that is the point of departure. And I think I totally agree with Major Mbijiwe in terms of retired Major Mbijiwe in terms of diplomacy. And I'll take the side of Jim Butcher in his works, The Turncoat. He says that in our diplomacy, we should adopt a policy where we carry a gun in one hand and a sandwich in the other, and we ask our allies, which side will you prefer? Because really, if whatever happened yesterday is anything to go by, then as a country, we really need to reevaluate our friendship with these some countries that have been perceived to be our friends. So we need, as far as we need to show an example as an oasis of peace and also a mature nation, we also have to have, we also need to have a very dynamic balance between diplomacy and also looking into things that matter most in terms of national interest.
All right, so we know...
Before I leave, I just want to make this before I go to another. if once you have done what you are suggesting, once Kenya has taken a roll call of its perceived enemies, as you suggest, you will now know that Ethiopia is your enemy, that Tanzania is your enemy, that Somalia is your enemy, so that you have this roll call of people you call your enemies. So what are you going to do? Are you going to now engage in war with them? Or you are going to do what? My own view, and you don't have to agree with it, is that when countries are relating sovereign countries, there will always be differences and there will always be points of disagreement. When you disagree, that does not make you an enemy of the other. Friendship is not about agreeing on everything. Friendship is about agreeing on certain things in an agreeable manner and disagreeing in an agreeable manner. So this roll call of enemies that you want is not going to be useful. We want to think strategically within the East African community. We'll sometimes disagree. On COVID-19, we have disagreed, even with Uganda, on how to deal with truck drivers. We have disagreed with many countries. That does not make us enemies. And number two, when we say that we have disagreed on strategic interests, part of it is because we are disunited. And you can you see yourself playing into the hands of people who want to divide us? When you now tell me that simply because we did not have Djibouti, or Djibouti did not step down for us, or that somebody did not vote for us, therefore, because of strategic military intelligence, do mistakes not occur? Is there not a possibility that our planes that went into Ethiopia were victims of friendly fire? Is that not known in the military world? And that what we should do is to activate diplomacy? So this saber-rattling diplomacy that you want Kenya to engage in, how is it going to help us? Is it going to merely poison relationship? I am of the view that we should avoid...
Before Professor runs away, before Professor runs off, Professor, before you go, I want to ask a cardinal question. You are telling us that we should not review fatigue evaluation. We are not talking about an African review. We are talking about internal review mechanism of fatigue evaluation of the foreign policy. For example, Kenya suggested to the United Nations Security Council that Al-Shabaab is a terrorist group. It has killed you. It has killed your relative. It has bombed our buildings. It has slaughtered us. I want you to answer me as a normal human being, as you are. How do we treat countries that go there and say, no, don't gazette Al-Shabaab as a terrorist group? You yourself, what do you call Al-Shabaab? Tell me, because I don't want us to go and leave this audience without you answering me what you would like to call Al-Shabaab. And for you, you are two. Another question, then you hammerize and go. African Union, which we want you to lead tomorrow. I am one of those forwarding your name to lead African Union as African Union Commissioner. Believe me or not, I have worked with Rawlings. You don't know Rawlings. I know Rawlings. I'm a soldier. And we are going to bring a motion. We want an independent Secretary General, African Union chairperson, who is not biased. African Union is biased. All the French-speaking countries, apart from Morocco, Equatorial Guinea, and I'm now talking authoritatively on intelligence, and that intelligence came all the way from New York. Morocco voted for Kenya. Equatorial Guinea voted for Kenya. The rest of French-speaking countries on this continent, including Rwanda, did not vote for Kenya. You want us to play about academically here? No. Time has come that Nyerere, whom you quote every day, was even worse. Nkrumah that you quote every day was worse. If Nkrumah returned from Moscow, he would have slaughtered General Champong. I've given you a clue. If Nkrumah turned from Moscow early enough, he would have slaughtered General Champong, his own brother-in-law. Because it is because Nkrumah was tough that the Champongs stood up and overthrew him. So we are playing with fire here. There are countries in Africa, when we decide in AU to back Kenya, they go undergo in their Francophone situation. As we speak now, Mr. P.L.O. Lumumba, a dignified professor of international law, constitutionalism, a great friend of Dr. Matsanga, AU is divided. The Ghanaian man, the deputy, Ghanaian AU chairperson, deputy, against the French-speaking tall 6.1 feet, called Mahamat Faki, a useless guy. There you are. Discuss it.
I'll respond.
And challenge me on any facts that I have not brought on table.
Let me, first of all, I think the debate has spun off rail.
No, it is in the rail. It is in the rail because you want to hide these smaller things. You are going to become the Secretary General of African Union. Don't hide. Talk to us.
May I be allowed to respond? My own view is that there are certain facts which do not require examination.
Yes.
The United Nations and the African Union has characterized a number of organizations as terrorist organizations, and those include Al-Shabaab and Boko Haram. Indeed, the very basis why the African Union called for the silencing of the guns in the year 2020 is to deal with those organizations, and I think nobody is debating about that. Number two, there is also evidence to suggest that the African Union has not...
Please, drop. Let me just
make my point, please.
Yeah. Al-Shabaab is not yet gazetted as a terrorist group. Don't mislead the public, please.
May I be, I've not used gazetted, I've said recognized. And there is a big difference between recognized and gazetted.
Thank you.
And therefore, the reason why the African Union has declared the year 2020 as the year of the silencing of the guns is because they recognize that Al-Shabaab is a destabilizing factor in Somalia, and Boko Haram is a destabilizing factor in the Sahelian region. That understood, I want to go back to the question. When you have a dispute such as you have, peace and harmony will not be helped, and the aim to silencing the gun will not be helped by people who think that labeling countries as your enemies is the way to go. I've already suggested that one of the things that Kenya should now do, now that it holds the office of the representative of the African region, is to engage in shuttle diplomacy. A shuttle diplomacy that will try to bring into the fold the countries that may have had a different view from us. And the countries that I would deal with first is Djibouti, which as I've already indicated. That is what maturity does. Number two, the African Union may have its problems, Chairman Mahamat may have his problems, but the truth is, this organization will always have problems as long as it is funded from outside, as long as the country, the African Union, is divided into Francophone and Lusophone and Arabophone and Anglophone, there will always be a problem. And that is why, as early as 1970, and you are calling me at a time, I'm just rereading Kwame Nkrumah's Africa Must Unite. And I want to read this statement because it summarizes what I want. This statement was written by Kwame Nkrumah on the 22nd day of April 1970 when he was in exile in Conakry, Guinea. He said, The wave of military coups and the stepping up of imperialist and neo-colonialist aggression in Africa since 1963, when Africa Must Unite was published, has proved conclusively the urgent need for political unification. No single part of Africa can be safe or free to develop fully and independently while any part remains unliberated, and while Africa's vast economic resources continue to be exploited by the imperialists and neo-colonialists. Unless Africa is politically united under an all-African Union government, there can be no solution to our political and economic problems. I want to conclude with that. The entire neo-colonial enterprise is to make us engage in the kind of potentially divisive debate that we are engaged in, where we are trying to put the mark of Cain upon our brother nations at a time when we should be embracing them and pointing out their errors in love. This is what I'm saying. Saber rattling diplomacy is not going to be useful. It is the politics of rapprochement. And I pray and hope that our president, Mr. Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta, will not be a saber rattler. He will be a peaceful man who engages in political rapprochement, while conscious of these other things which you say are of strategic significance and using them to good effect. That is my contribution.
Before he leaves,
I also want to leave.
I just want to leave. But before he leaves, we know
Professor, I agree with you. I am not a diplomat. I just want you to leave, as you know, I am an activist. I am an activist. I am not a diplomat. You understand me. Two, I am a soldier. I don't believe in this too much talk. We have troops in Kismayo. We have troops in Mogadishu. My own cousins, my own younger men, my own sons. You are not going to speak until Angel Gabriel comes down. No. We have governments that respect Kenya as a country that has sacrificed its troops. I'm speaking on behalf of those younger men. They are on the ground. And give them, what would you think if a soldier in Kismayo had that Somalia does not like them by voting Djibouti? I am not saying President Uhuru Kenyatta should follow me, because President Uhuru Kenyatta is not an activist. I am a Tata of the international community. You know me. And when I stick on something, I get it. In 2008, between me and you, we met and you told me, go slow on some of this Ocampo. You remember? You gave me a very nice lunch. Very nice. That's when I remembered you. I told you, my brother, I will finish them. But I'm not going that route. I am on international scene. The international scene here is this. You have agreed with me that AU has a problem. I would like to propose here, before you leave, that I've launched your campaign. For the bid, I've launched your campaign. No, don't worry. I am going to get you people. I've launched your campaign to become the AU chairperson. If you don't want,
please,
we shall have it.
Please. I ask Professor one question before he leaves, because I understand he has to leave. So we know that Kenya, having been elected to this post, some of the decisions that Kenya may be involved in making is including sanctions, authorizing use of force to preserve peace, as well as electing judges of the International Court of Justice. And right now, as we speak, Kenya has a case there, the maritime case between Kenya and Somalia there. Will now Kenya's position there have any bearing on the case already existing at the International Court of Justice?
In my view, now remember that first of all, what you have cited is the mandate of the Security Council. So Kenya will be involved in executing the mandate of the Security Council as set out in the Charter, and will be responsible for Chapter 7 issues. I know that we have an ongoing maritime dispute with Somalia. The ICJ, once constituted, exercises independent judgment based on the facts and the evidence. In fact, one of the things that we are suggesting ourselves is that that matter ought to be withdrawn from the ICJ so that it is resolved bilaterally under the aegis of the African Union or IGAD initially, and then the African Union. So that is the situation. Of course, there are other dynamics that are in issue. Once again, there are international interests in that particular case. But ultimately, I believe that the ICJ will be guided by the existing jurisprudence and the traditional rules of delimiting maritime boundaries. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor. Take my bid.
Professor, they are just left the debate. But Doctor, the same question I asked Professor there earlier, now that Kenya has this position as a non-permanent member of the United Nations Security Council, will it affect the standing of the case that we already have with Somalia, the ICJ case there?
No, it will not affect. It will not affect the relationship, the case, because Kenya, as the professor said, is mandated by the United Nations Security Council under Chapter 7, Article 3940. Professor might just have said it. I have it here. He knows. Chapter 7, Article 3940 of the United Nations Security Council that talks about regional peace, regional stability. That if you violate that, the United Nations Security Council can overrule. The question of the Indian Ocean blocks, the question of the Indian Ocean oil blocks affects the relationship, creates insecurity in the Indian Ocean. Even if you go to become a professor of where, it will affect the Indian Ocean trade. If we don't come in, if the United Nations Security Council, under Chapter 7, I want you, all of you, to go and read Chapter 7. What does it mean? If something is going to spark chaos in the Indian Ocean, the Security Council can step in and stop it. Like Article 127 of the ICC, there is Article 17 of the Rome Statute. There is Article 14 of the 15 of the Rome Statute. That if the Security Council sees that indictments for a particular person is going to cause problems in that region, they can overrule the courts. So what PLO is telling us is half right, half wrong. The Security Council and the Kenya should, I don't want to lie here, Kenya should make sure that there is no spark of anything in the Indian Ocean. Therefore, if I were, and me as an activist who has taken the route of making sure that this problem is brought back to African Union, constitutive arrangement of the African Union by discussing as AU, I'm not going to keep quiet. I have warned button number 1, Miriam. The judge, that small Somali judge, is no longer there. I am not bothered. he will not be there as a Somali judge to judge Kenya, because I think it is unfair for a Somali judge, a relative of the president of Somalia, to be able to judge a Kenyan case. That one I won. 2, if Kenya itself allows this to go ahead, there is chapter 7, there is article 39, there is article 40 of chapter 7 of the United Nations Security Council, which says if there is any threat to peace. Let me ask the panel as I leave, don't you think that if the judges in The Hague said the islands belong to Somalia, what will Kenya do in the morning? Don't you think if yes, I'm asking, have you seen, all of you are quiet? What will Kenya do in the morning? Kenya will sleep, will sit and with its army, just keep quiet here and cry that you have taken the islands, the oil blocks in the Indian Ocean.
Yes.
No.
I think Kenya.
So it is a threat. That case in the Hague is a threat to peace, because if you give these blocks to one of these countries, you will spark a war, and Mbijiwe will go back to his aircraft and fly even the nearest aircraft and go and fight there. So you tell me that I'm wrong? Where? I have never, on international relations, we can argue with Professor until sunset. That there's nothing he can beat me on that. But I just want to say before I leave, the essence here is that Kenya has got this position. Kenya must use this position effectively. That's one, must use it to unite the countries in the region that are disunited. Must evaluate its friendship. Miriam, yesterday we talked about friendship. Bichiwe was not there. We can't continue to assume that Bichiwe loves me.
That Mijiwe loves you. And the retired general there, do you think that Kenya's new position now will make Somalia uncomfortable in regards to this case and the ICJ?
Sure. I mean, there's a reason why all these countries connived against us. And you bet for sure they were talking at night. They must have held secret meetings. They must have, held discussions. But again, as I said, I blame it all to our national intelligence. We've become such a complacent intelligence community that we don't even wiretap these people. We should have intelligence capability that we can even wiretap the ambassadors of these nations here. I mean, it's shocking that we have Russian embassy right next to our defense headquarters. The Chinese embassy is right across our defense headquarters. That kind of madness, you bet they know what our defense is talking about. They have eavesdropping equipment. These are developed nations. And by the way, talking about Russia, of the big five, Russia stood with Kenya. That's our true friend. But strategically and in terms of intelligence, I think these countries will not be happy about us. There'll be more moments where they will express their unhappiness. Rwanda, completely disappointing that President Kagame, with all that our country has done to Rwanda, would lead his country to vote against us. I thought of all the countries in the region, we had Rwanda as one of our most loyal friends. And as Dr. Matanga said, sometimes it's good to confirm who your friend is. And truly, I don't care how people look at it, as a thinking from a security perspective and as a Kenyanist. I mean, I love this country. As a Kenyan security consultant, I'll tell you, this region, Kenya is in danger, and it's only a matter of time. If we ever have a major problem here, a political problem, civil issues like we had 2007-8, I can assure you the region will just look at that. Only Museveni stood with us that time. Only Museveni will stand with us any other time. Only Uganda is our true friend in this region, and of course South Sudan. But however, looking at the ICC issue, Somalia is not going to like it. They ain't going to like it for sure. And if Kenya doesn't use this opportunity, because again, our technocrats, like I said, some people will just celebrate that we're in the UN Security Council and will not even care to use that to our national interest. Well, Professor Lumumba thinks we are representing African group. Yes, that's the one part. But the other part is we are representing Kenya. We should, in the international system, national interest always inform our definition of foreign policy. If our national interest is not leading us, then we have no business even being in the United Nations Security Council. So when we get there, Kenya should use now we have muzzling power. We have serious muzzling power. We are the superpower of Africa right now, while we are the UN Security Council. So we should muzzle Ethiopia into stopping their madness with our planes. We should muzzle Somalia into stopping their madness with our maritime borders. We should muzzle Uganda, my brother Doctor's village, from taking our Mijingo. Kenya should put its national interest first.
But
if you don't, we'll have done 2 years of nothing.
All right. And just to, because now we know that with Kenya having this opportunity, it could have a chance to preside over the council sittings, an influential opportunity to influence some agendas there at the United Nations Security Council. Of course, we know the 5 permanent members there with their veto power is something else. But we know that Kenya could have an opportunity to be influential in some of these agendas there. So in this regard, I don't know, now that Kenya has this position, what are some of the things that you'd want to see Kenya advance on behalf of the continent? Yes.
Kenya should seek unity of purpose amongst African countries or sub-Saharan countries. That's point number 1. And I'm very happy with what President Uhuru Kenyatta said yesterday. President Uhuru Kenyatta said, this win is not only his win. He wants to thank Djibouti for being a very good competitor who has agreed that there was democracy. That is point number 1. Point number 2, Kenya should use this to find out regional conflicts, to close any gap where gaps are. For example, to increase more funding to AMISOM in Somalia in order to wipe out the terrorists who are lingering, who are still butchering our people. 3, Kenya should also use this as a spring point to gazette Al-Shabaab as a terrorist group. There is no shortcut here. And me, I'm not fearing, let me remove my glasses. I'm not fearing to say they are a terrorist group. Because I'm a soldier. I was born to die once when I became a soldier. I'm saying they have killed too many people. They have killed many people in Somalia. We need a change. So Kenya should use these 2 years to find them, the leaders of terrorist groups that are hidden in Asmara, that are hidden in Doha, that are hidden in Djibouti, Because for me, you know, one of the things that I like, and I like Professor Lumumba, I don't sugarcoat, because I'm not looking for employment. I have passed the expiry date of employment. I speak as an expert in the field of conflict resolution. When you see America not endorsing a resolution from Kenya not to gazette terrorist groups that has killed us in this hotel in the South Westgate, you know there is a problem. I don't sugarcoat. Can I tell you one thing? As I hand over to somebody else to speak, don't count this date and quote me if you want. Very soon, you will hear they have struck an agreement with terrorists. There has been a meeting taking place in Doha, in a hotel. I have all the details. And the four countries, Ethiopia, Djibouti, Somalia, Eritrea, Qatar, kumbe they know the terrorists who kill us every day. So, help me, oh God. But that is my stand. I've said it here, that Kenya should use this chance to broaden unity of purpose, to bring a united Africa together. I agree with Lumumba that President Uhuru Kenyatta should take the first flight to Djibouti when Corona is over, because there is plenty of Corona in Djibouti. If you look at the figures, they are huge. I think they are double Kenya. Am I wrong?
Corona.
Yes, and they are also containing, because the Americans are there. The bases are there. They are having treatment, part of the flow treatment. Us who don't have Americans here, we are in chaos. So don't worry about that. If President Uhuru Kenyatta can fly into Djibouti to say, hey, you did this against me, but I'm here, that's very good. He's not chosen as a Kenyan. It is true, it is an African slot. But ourselves,
Retired Major wants to leave, so I'd like for
Yes.
him to perhaps also on the same question I asked Dr. Matsanga. Now that Kenya has this position, and we know it will have an opportunity to make to influence some of the agendas that the United Nations Security Council. What are some of the agendas would you like for Kenya to advance on behalf of this continent?
For sure. This continent has a pocket of unrest, or regions of there have been endemic regions of unrest. So I hope Kenya comes in and champions the pacifying of the guns, the silencing of the guns. Particularly, let's start in the Horn of Africa. The Horn of Africa has had immense problems in the Congo, Great Lakes region. Of course, not to mention Somalia. I mean, that's an obvious case. Just this morning, African mission troops downed an Al-Shabaab drone. Al-Shabaab flew a drone over African Union mission troops in Somalia this morning, and they brought it down.
so you telling me, where do they get this drone?
Yeah, they are becoming sophisticated.
Yeah, where did they get the drone? And we sit here to cry. Where do they get the drone?
I don't even have a problem with the hardware. We should actually have a problem with the training. Where do they train these young men to run the drones? Those schools are not in Somalia. See?
No, we have to hit both the software
And the hardware.
And the humanware.
I wish we Ugandans were given the time to throw these guys to Indian Ocean. We have had enough.
Retired.
So we look at pacifying the guns in the Horn of Africa. In the Sahel, I mean, from Cameroon, which has been, on punchlines, headlines for a long time, Cameroon going down into Nigeria, Boko Haram, and the entire Sahel region, from Mali to Burkina Faso, pockets of Senegal, we have had so much problems in the Sahel region that we even moved Dakar Rally from Africa to Latin America. It's still Dakar Rally, even though it meant Dakar, Senegal. So this is the kind of situation. Libya has become a completely failed state right now. So hope Kenya can complete. And Kenya has always set pace with peacekeeping and peacemaking. I mean, we've been there from Namibia to Yugoslavia to East Timor to other nations in the world. And so we can set pace. We have renowned peacemakers in this country. Among them, of course, our host, Dr. Matsanga. We have the likes of General Sumbeyo, General Opande. We can actually set pace, with peace building in the region. And of course, number two, which is very, very important, is for Kenya to use its position right now to advocate for more inclusion of women in matters peace and security, because there's been women have been left out of these peace processes, even though in war or in situations where there is no peace and security, women and children hurt the most. So Kenya can set its pace. And I should personally pass a congratulatory message to Madam our defense minister. She was the foreign affairs minister, Madam Juma. I saw a congratulatory message yesterday. It was even on a KDF letterhead. I mean, not letterhead, but it had a KDF logo. I don't know if our predecessor at the foreign affairs, our successor at foreign affairs has done a better job, but I thank Madam Juma for having set pace for this. This was coming for a long time. And so personally, I congratulate her, and maybe in the reshuffle, they may consider bringing her back to foreign affairs if Kalonzo will not take it. So, well, yeah, that is it. That's my parting shot.
What speculation you are talking about?
Say that again?
Is this your wish? You said she should be brought where?
To come back to foreign affairs to complete that mission. If not, then they should bring Madam Mohammed. And if not, at least Kalonzo can do it. As it will some people who are there, I wonder if they're doing that.
Vijiwe, thank you so much for joining us on the
He's
show
not
today.
going. He's still with us.
No, he said he will be leaving at 12:30, so we have to respect his time. Yes.
My pleasure.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Pleasure.
Yeah. So, Daniel, the same question that retired Major there answered, and Doctor, as Kenya now seeks to take this position, and it will assume this position in January of 2021, what are some of the things that you would want Kenya to do on behalf of the continent?
Yes, of course, Miriam, when you look at the campaign Kenya was running, it was a campaign based on competence and capability. When you look at the 10-point agenda there, then you see Kenya has over time proven to be a paragon of peace in this region, and it has as much as possible tried to send out peace missions to try and calm the guns in various countries in the region, in the African continent. And now, of course, this seat that comes at the UN Security Council shall create an avenue for appropriate linkages between the UN and the AU in solving regional conflicts and attaining peace. So this is a very, very good opportunity for Kenya to advance whatever role it has been playing in the region of bringing peace in the continent of Africa. But also another point to note is that Kenya can do is to champion for gender equality, and I think Major Retired Mijiwe has talked about it, about women who are the most affected when we have conflicts but are never involved in these peace processes, and trying to bring measures that can enable to end the wars in various countries in Africa. So championing for gender equality and promote policies that are gender conscious in conflict resolution programs will be a key agenda for Kenya if they can do that. And most likely, the last point is looking at the issue of youth, and this will help easily mobilize the youth empowerment concept and inclusion of the youth in key programs. Of course, the African continent, the largest population is comprised of the youngest, the youth, and which are unemployed, and this is something that should be checked so that in future we do have job creation for young people, we do support innovation in Africa and all that.
All right, thank you so much. Doctor, your parting short.
First of all, I would like to thank you that when I relinquished the moderation part, you have been a very able moderator. You've given space to our best show. And this is how we shall be doing it. Enjoyable show. And we brought in the knowledge. I want to thank Professor Piero Lumumba. I want to thank Mijiwe. That this is the type of discourse that we need. We need to evaluate the exercise. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs needs to sit down to evaluate. There are serious points that were picked from this. Serious points. one of the points is, who are our friends? America knows its friends. America is not going to walk in the waters of North Korea. America knows a foreign policy depends on the reality, not assumption. And I want, this topic has been very great for students who are doing their master's degree in Nairobi University, because most of them were calling me to bring in this topic. Miriam, they have benefited very greatly on this side loopholes. Assumption is what is the danger of diplomacy. In war, you don't assume that there is no roadblock ahead or there is no ambush. Every soldier who fights on the front line is always worried over what is going to happen. The next mile they are driving through, is there an ambush? You must be always ready. But how many times will Kenya be ambushed by even people we think are friends? A few weeks ago, we were talking about Qatar sending money to Al-Shabaab on this same program, and we showed the evidence. So how long will this take? We want to thank Kenya. I personally want to thank the ministry officials who have conducted the exercise of Kenya winning this slot. But Kenya must utilize this slot to build Africa unity, but at the same time also help itself to put its position as an African first country, that in case there is a reform of the United Nations Security Council, Kenya stands a chance to be a permanent member on the United Nations Security Council. Because that is what Kenya should strive to do, to have a permanent seat, at least 2 seats or 3 seats for Africa. Because there are conflicts. Africa is the one that makes people have the money. Where does China sell its arms? Where is Russia selling its arms? Where is France selling its arms? In Cameroon. So we are the problem. We have a problem, therefore we need a permanent member on the Security Council. And indeed, if Kenya can propose this motion, the whole world will second it. And there's nothing wrong that can change in the 1945 or 1947 when a UN was formed, that will stop it from changing the resolutions that have come from the people that they are leading. I want to thank you, all of you, the panelists, and I want to thank Miriam for coordinating this show. We return again next Friday with the hottest. For me, that is my take.
The parting short.
Yes, I think a lot have been discussed, and perhaps the points to take home is that this is a time Kenya needs to reevaluate its friendship, and of course that will guide the future endeavors, and knowing which are the correct buttons to press, and which countries do we forge an alliance with based on our national interest. But the bottom line also is that now this is an opportunity to serve the African group, and let's put those differences aside as we forge forward. And of course, retired Major Mijiwe and PLO Lumumba mentioned about President Uhuru Kenyatta extending an olive branch to Djibouti, just to make sure that we do have a united continent and we do pursue a common agenda of African unity, peace, and prosperity. That is my parting shot.
Thank you there. Now, Kenya last evening won the United Nations Security Council seat after beating Djibouti in second round of voting on Thursday. Now, the contest between Kenya and Djibouti headed to the second round of voting Thursday after the first phase saw Nairobi's victory insufficient to win the UN seat. Now, with 191 out of the 193 countries voting, Kenya scored 129 votes, beating Djibouti, which got 62 votes. And now this means that Nairobi can from January 2021 return to the United Nations' most powerful organ after 23 years, where it will be part of key decisions in global peace and security. India, Mexico, Ireland and Norway had been elected earlier on Wednesday. Thank you so much. Let's meet here next time for Diplomatic Leaks. I am Miriam Gutu. Good afternoon.
Peace must be our goal and our guide. And all that we strive for as a human family, dignity and hope, progress and prosperity, depends on peace. But peace depends on us.